Okay, so I know all of you probably know about soil testing, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of review here, and I'm sure our other two speakers, and I guess I'll go on and introduce them as well. Dorivar Rios-Diaz is not any surprise for us, or he's been here for quite a while, so he'll probably tell you how long he's been here, but we appreciate him coming out here and putting in all these fertility meetings for you guys, so please have your questions and ask questions on the way. You don't have to save it till the end or anything. And then we also have a really guest speaker, clear from North Dakota, right?
That's right, the one without Mount Rushmore.
Okay. Dr. Dave Franzan, is that how you pronounce it? Franzan, okay. He has just recently retired, so he is now a professor emeritus, is your title, correct?
Yeah.
So he's going to be talking on the biologicals, additives to the fertilizer, things like that. So if you had any questions like that, please ask any questions. And the same with Dorivar as well. He's going to go over the new K-State recommendations, the new publication that's over there on the table too. So, and plus recommendations and things for the crops. So please ask them questions as well. So I'm going to start doing a little bit on soil testing. Hopefully you guys know why you soil test. Surely, let's have a show of hands. How many soil tests? Everybody's hands should come up, right? Yeah. Okay. So, and y'all know soil testing isn't a perfect thing, right? But it's the best we have. So, we'll get into this a little bit more, but truly it's the only thing that will tell you exactly what's out there. The times of putting on the same thing year after year after year is probably gone just because of the cost and everything of the inputs, right? So hopefully producers are doing this and you guys are selling the product, and hopefully you guys go out there and maybe give them some free tests or actually collect the samples for them. So you all are on that same thing too. But that just tells you how much nutrients or how much of the nutrients are out there. But there's specific ways to test that makes it a little bit more accurate for you, so you get the most accurate results for the time that you spend in collecting those samples. Okay, this just kind of tells you the probability of how much response you're going to get to that fertilizer. You spend the money for it, you want to get response, right? You want to get something out of it, okay? So this just kind of tells you phosphorus, and this is probably the one that really is based on what the tests are, whether you're going to get a response. And so you're at that 30 pounds or 30 parts per million is kind of that magic key where you're probably not going to see as much response, whereas if your P comes back as less than 5, that's a pretty good response rate. It's an 85 to 100%. So you really need to look at that. Is P a really mobile nutrient or immobile? Immobile, isn't it? Okay, so you got to kind of look at those things too, and how much residual that you have in your soil profile. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. Just proper soil sampling, and I know you guys are going to say, I've been doing this forever. I'm hoping I'm doing it right. But there's just a little few reminders that will get you maybe a little bit more accurate about taking samples, and then the soil depths are extremely important. So you get the accurate results. All right, so you need to, if you can, I know this is really tough, especially since we have some dry conditions, but you need to kind of stay consistent with your soil depth. I've got my little toys here on the table, but you guys probably have some toys that's hooked to your truck that you don't have to use your power, right? But see, this is pretty tall for me, so sometimes I will take my partner in crime out, Mr. Wick. Some of you know Don, my husband, because you had him as a teacher, but sometimes it's difficult kind of to get down as deep as you need to go. Okay, so there's one like this, and I didn't bring my trusty, dusty WD-40 can. How many of you use that? Yep, it will not affect the soil test at all. So be sure you use that. Here's another one that has a step on it. But what's the disadvantage of using the one with the step compared to this? Depth. Mm-hmm. So this is much easier. See how this is lower for me? Plus you have a step on it right here. So, but this only will get 12 inches. Sometimes that's all the deeper you can go lately. But I remember one year, I can't remember how many years ago it was, Dorval. You used this and you went clear down. And you got the total profile.
Yes, and I like you can turn it around. And
Yes, you see how it has a hole in the top of it?
Yeah.
So you
And
can
that goes to the
simply
back.
put it down. You don't have to dig it out with a screwdriver like you do this one. Okay, so this works pretty cool, actually. Then I'll show you my other toys and things that I have here. But we tell you to get at least 15 or 20 samples, and we'll get to that, knowing that you'll probably only get 7 or 8, right? Is that how we work? So if I told you to get 30, then you might get 15, right? I know
Or
how
7
you
or
work.
8.
There you go. See, I know how you guys work. Okay, so there's the basic tools that we did. Now, we also have, you can bring it in really anything you want, but these are the sample bags that we send it in. Even though, in Durabar, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it says on here to just fill to this line. I tell them to fill to the words.
Yeah, that's a minimum, I guess, but yeah, the more the better. Really.
Yeah, the minimum is this line, but please go to the black words, okay? So, the more the better. And they keep it for how long? As much room at 6 months, do you think that you keep
No,
samples?
we usually keep it at least 3 weeks. To a
Oh,
month.
3 weeks, okay.
So if you want to go back and reanalyze something.
Okay, so that's a good point, because sometimes I'll have you guys call and say, oh, I forgot to get this test. I said, no problem, we'll call them and see if they still have your soil sample there. Okay, here is the most important thing, if you don't remember anything else today, is your soil depth. Remember the immobile nutrients, okay? So it's 0 to 6 inches. Now, lately, because of the because of the drought, sometimes we recommend 3 inches. Is that correct, Dorivar? Depending on the conditions.
For the 0 to 6, we still want to do the 0 to 6.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
The one situation where 0 to 3, we talked a little bit about yesterday, is for pH in object systems, right?
Okay.
And that may be one place where we want to do 0 to 3. For sure.
Okay, so those are your immobile nutrients. We already talked about phosphorus, but it's pH, potassium, zinc, iron, and boron. So those are the ones that, if you go, okay, so let me ask you this. What if you take a 12-inch sample, because I get a lot of those in the office, maybe you do too, and they want both nitrogen and they want pH. Is that a real accurate depth? No. So why is it not, and what happens to that sample if you're trying to get pH or phosphorus and you give me a 12-inch sample? It's going to dilute it, isn't it? Because you're going the 12 inches, whereas maybe it's only available in the top 6 inches. So you're really, ideally, in a perfect world, you want to have 2 different samples. You want to have your 0 to 6, put it in a bucket, and then you want to go and go as deep as you can. And then you want to get your 0 to 24 inches, which is your nitrogen, your chloride, or your sulfur. Does that make sense? You need 2 different samples, ideally. Okay? Okay, now, where in the field and when? Okay, there's different philosophies on where you want to take your samples, right? So it just depends on the variability in your fields or in your ground. So you can take a random sample, but that's if you have pretty much the same field. How many of you have the same soil conditions in the same field of 20 or 40 acres? Nobody, right? Okay, or you can follow some type of a pattern, or how you manage things, or composite and mix them all. So it depends on you, but be consistent if you're going to take it every 3 years. Be consistent on how you sample it, so then you can compare it every 3 years on what your levels are and kind of where you're going with your levels. Okay, when to take your soil sample. So sampling actually can take place anytime, right? Depending on maybe what crop you are, but be consistent. And we seem to use that word a lot now. Be consistent with your soil sampling, your when you take them, where you take them. But you probably want to wait at least 30 days after you would make an application of something, just to kind of give you an idea on really what's out there and the residual that might be there. Okay, when to take these tests? Winter, early spring is probably good for corn and sorghum. Wheat, probably before you plant them in the fall. Okay, so just be consistent on when you take those. Okay, we already talked about this. So just, and I believe that 15 to 20 cores, Dorvar, is that for like 40 acres is kind of what you base that on?
Yes, and what we're really dealing with there is the small scale variability, right?
Okay.
And so that 15 to 20 samples, and those are cores, right? Number of cores.
Right.
Going in one sample.
Right.
Regardless of the size of the area, we still want to keep that because that's dealing with that small scale variability.
Okay. Okay, so how often do you take it? And that kind of depends too, right? Average, you probably take it every 2 to 4 years. But if you're having a problem from year to year, you might take it sooner than that. So it just kind of depends on that. This is from some work from Bonnie Gordon, where Scott is right now. He's our, I'll introduce Scott too. Scott Dooley is the agronomist at the Scandia site and the Belleville site for Kansas State University. So he's the agronomist in charge. Barney at one time was an agronomist many, many years ago. Those that have been around for a while probably remember Barney. But this just kind of shows you what can happen from year to year. And we're looking at phosphorus here. When you add phosphorus, it doesn't tend to go change as much. That's your red line. But with no phosphorus, and you can see from year to year, it's going to eventually deplete. So that's not any surprise or any new discovery. Okay. Ideally, you want to use these bags because it is like plastic lined and they're kind of special bags. So we'll send them in here. You can bring in a baggie full. We'll mix it all up for you and then we'll put them in these bags for you. Okay? Or I've got plenty of bags here so you guys can take some if you need some. Don't worry about drying it before the soils lab dries it for you. This is kind of different about refrigerating it. You definitely don't want to leave it in your cab for like a week before you bring it in because that can certainly affect your sampling, your levels in there. So if you did collect it and you can't get into the office, maybe put it in the fridge. Does that help at all, Dorvar? Or
yes,
okay.
That's the recommended. You're not going to be able to send it out, put it in the fridge. You can also go ahead and dry it if you want, right?
Oh.
You can put it on top of clean paper, on a table or something and let it dry. Once it's dry, then it's stable. Okay. What happens is nutrient like nitrogen, if you have microbial activity happening in there, what do you need for that? You need temperature and you need moisture, right? And if you have those two, again, warm temperature sitting somewhere, there's going to be a lot of mineralization happening. You're incubating that soil, essentially. We don't want that. That's going to skew the numbers quite a bit.
Okay. Here's just some useful tests to do, and these are the ones that K-State does. And you see that there's 3 different types of phosphorus ones, and I'm not going to get into this a lot because Dorvar will kind of talk about it with the soil testing lab. But these are some things that have calculated results that we can compare your samples that come in. So everybody's familiar with those too as well. All right, here's the soil test that you get from K-State if you have used our lab. So it will tell you there the different levels, and then it will give you the recommendations down here underneath there in that graph. And then it gives you recommendations on the bottom line there. And Dorvar is going to go over this, but that's over there too. And so K-State started a new recommendations, was that a year ago, Dorvar?
Yeah.
In 2024, beginning of 2024. So he'll go over that with you. And just in summary, remember your soil sample needs to be representative of your field. Don't go in some corner, obscure little corner thing and think that you're going to get a representative of the whole field. So try to get a representative. Remember the soiling depths. That's probably the most important thing. If you're really going to get a true picture of what's out there in your soil, that you can use that when you purchase things. Take a lot of cores, and that's what I'm going to tell you, not 15 or 20 because then you go half. And the profile notch can be the source. So remember the nitrogen and the residual things that you have out there too. Yield goal is also a factor. When you get that report from K-State, if they don't have a yield goal that you're having in mind, because that really affects the recommendation that comes from the lab, they just take the default one. So, and you can use different yield goals. If you want to say, I want to go for 70 bushel wheat, or I want to go for 50 bushel wheat, you can have 3 or 4 of them. The same with corn, to kind of give you an idea where it falls and what's the recommendation. There's your recommendation depths again. So just remember 0 to 6. And I've tried to get the Soils Lab maybe to change that 0 to 24, because to me, when they say 0 to 24, 8 inches is okay. Right? But if they would say 18 to 24, then you know you have to go deeper. But I don't know. So what they see here to me is they see 0 to 6 and 0 to 24. So I'm just going to give them one sample that's 12 inches, and it will work for both. Except not the top one, because you're going 0 to 6. So anyway, maybe you guys don't think that way. But I have some producers that say that. Okay. I think that's it. Any questions? Oh, I was going to show you this little toy that we got. We've had this for a while. Those that are very intuitive, you guys can make one of these yourself. Everybody has the 5-gallon plastic buckets, right? Well, all they did is, there's a hole in the bottom of this. They have 2 different drill size of bits here. And you just simply use one of these. And we have plenty of batteries. So if you check this out, I've got 6 batteries in here because it's going to take a lot. So if you could hook this to your 4-wheeler or something. This one's a little tougher to get down. Just because, you know, when you get down below that, it's kind of tougher. But this, it really works pretty good if you're going to get the 0 to 6. So I've had this for a while, and it's from a company, but I've had a couple producers that actually have made their own. So, and you can check this out from our office, and I believe every office in our district has one. So that's just some little toys. So any questions? Yes?
Where do you go to get your soil probes when you need to replace them?
I call door. Which ones are?
We got
that's
a whole.
how we did this one.
Yeah, where did those come from? Because
Yeah.
we got the whole.
GMC, I think is the company.
I think that's correct.
There are many companies out there. That's one it's called specific. It's called the Dakota Pro. I like it for profile nitrogen stuff. It works very well. Like you say, because you're not limited, you can get 0.24 pretty nicely. I like that one in particular.
Okay.
But I was going to ask you what you think about like the drill and
This one?
yeah.
Actually, it works pretty good because all you do is you go down one way and then to reverse it, it brings it back up and then that falls in that bucket. So you can just go down pretty good. But I've seen some of your grad students take these samples. They do it quickly. I mean, they're like.
Yes, and it is very easy to use. I like it. That's my favorite one. But
Okay.
it's
Question on the bucket, so there's a few producers I didn't get my samples pulled off for the ground froze. It went out yesterday, and that ground is hard at 2 inches. I can't get
At
past
2
that.
inches even? Okay.
Yeah, how accurate is that? I mean, you're putting tape around your bit at 6 inches or whatever, or
Yeah.
how accurate do you think or has there been any work comparing a probe versus a auger?
Doing this.
that's the reason why I don't like it for research in particular, because I don't think you can do a really good job with that. With the other one, we have it marked, you know, we know exactly what we're getting. But then when it's very hard, it seems like that the drill works best.
Yes, yeah. And you can see that this has been used for a while because it's kind of loose and it's kind of wearing this off, but yeah.
To answer Garrett's deal, as long as you're doing it consistent, the same on each one of those, I mean, you would hope would be better than nothing.
It is. I mean, yeah, you have to do the best you can in terms of marking the depth and make sure you're hitting that depth. But it's a little, in my opinion, it's more difficult to be very precise with depth on that one compared to the pro.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's not gonna be as good. But then again, if that's the only option you have because it's so dry,
Yeah,
I'd rather have that than nothing, right?
exactly. So, okay, any other questions?
One that I've used when I've done